There is a strange moment during psychological growth. You wake up and realize you've been carrying emotional weight that was never yours. And once you recognize that pattern, your relationships begin to feel different. They feel distant, quiet, and far less urgent. It is very easy to misinterpret this silence. When the frantic energy drops out of your interactions, you might assume you are becoming cold, detached, or losing your capacity for empathy. We are conditioned to view constant emotional monitoring as a sign of care. We are taught to equate anxiety and high-stakes intensity with genuine love. This new quietness represents an overloaded system abruptly dropping a massive amount of invisible weight. Look at this schematic representing an emotional operating system, or EOS. In a healthy baseline, emotions aren't just isolated feelings. They are organizing forces that shape identity, attachment, and regulation, represented here by a balanced reciprocal flow of data between two people. But for highly perceptive people, this system operates differently. They don't just hear the words someone is saying. They absorb subtle atmospheric data, relational imbalances, underlying insecurity, and unspoken expectations from the people around them. The sheer act of perceiving all of this data creates a tangible psychological weight on the observer, altering the shape of the system under the pressure of the absorbed mass. To understand why relationships eventually go quiet, we have to look at why our nervous system decides to carry this specific burden in the first place. The psychologist John Bowlby established that human attachment is a survival system. Biologically, our nervous systems organize around whatever keeps us safe, ensures continuity, and secures our belonging within a group. This flowchart shows how that survival drive misfires in perceptive individuals. It creates a false equation. If the sensor perceives pain in someone else, it triggers an error, assuming responsibility, which forces an action to regulate the system. The perceptive person automatically begins carrying unasked-for burdens to keep the environment stable. They absorb another person's disappointment, their loneliness, their insecurity, and their unmet emotional needs. Nobody explicitly asks them to do this. The nervous system simply mandates it as an unconscious strategy to prevent abandonment and maintain connection. The nervous system is over-functioning, working overtime to artificially maintain emotional harmony under the guise of empathy. Over time, this continuous emotional labor hardens into a core identity. You organize your sense of self entirely around rescuing, reassuring, and emotionally carrying the people in your life. This leads to specific psychological confusions. You start mistaking worry for love, confusing guilt with loyalty, and swapping emotional labor for connection. The heavy cost of constantly carrying all of those unspoken emotional expectations is profound, persistent nervous system exhaustion. Eventually, the deep fatigue forces a necessary realization. Sensing someone else's emotional pain is not the equivalent of being responsible for resolving it. Sustaining a relationship through constant emotional caretaking comes at a steep price. You slowly disappear from your own life to keep everyone else afloat. Which brings us back to that unsettling quietness. When a relationship suddenly feels distant or less urgent, it is usually because the emotional system has finally stopped overfunctioning. When you remove the previous fuel sources, the anxiety, the guilt, the constant emotional monitoring, the dynamic is left feeling unfamiliar and neutral. This animation illustrates the difference. Two tightly tangled, frantic lines represent emotional intensity, which is often just unresolved attachment. True intimacy looks like these two distinct parallel lines moving in synchrony without overlapping. Once boundaries become clear, the resulting lack of emotional urgency defines the baseline reality of a differentiated emotional system. The famous psychiatrist Carl Jung once wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Becoming your true self demands returning emotional responsibility back to where it belongs. It requires resigning from the job of being psychologically necessary for everyone else. You develop a new framework for healthy boundaries, the ability to care about someone without absorbing their entire emotional world into your own body. True emotional maturity requires learning exactly where you end and where others begin, staying connected without ever abandoning yourself again.